Hello everyone, nice to meet you. So I have in my hand a collection of letters, all dusty and terribly fascinating, that tells the adventures of Annabelle Underwood. Right now, all you have to do is listen and enjoy the story I am about to tell you. And one more thing, I prefer to warn you, but English is not my mother tongue. I apologize in advance and I promise to improve as quickly as I can and for my acting too. So now you know everything, should we begin? This story is called The Princess. I will now summarize the first part before diving back into this investigation. If you would like, the link to the first part is in the description. Annabelle explains that after a period of rest and study in Boston with Haydn and their team, they are invited to a gala at the Hamilton's family, a society event they must attend to secure funding. There, a young heiress, Beryl Hamilton, shows off a magnificent necklace recently bought at auction, along with a eye-shaped brooch that is far less valuable but seems significant. Just as Annabelle and Haydn are about to leave, a deliberately caused power outrage plunges the house into darkness. In the confusions, Beryl's jewels are torn off and stolen. No one is unaccounted for, meaning the thief must be among them, or knows a secret way out. Annabelle quickly realizes the thief was carefully planned and ends with three key mysteries. How the thief knows the house so well, why the brooch was targeted, and how the jewels were removed so easily. So now I am reading the letter again. The sun rose lazily as I finished searching the house from top to bottom. Beryl and her father offered a small bite to it, which I accepted gladly. Having not slept all night, I would need some energy if I was going to solve this riddle. After breakfast, Haydn and I head into town to inspect the various jeweled shop and the auction house, because if the collapse hadn't been tampered with, I didn't believe they would have given away. It isn't as easy as it looks to tear a necklace from someone's neck. A brooch pinned to fabric is, by definition, easier to steal. Yet, even then, Beryl's dress showed no tears large enough, which meant the collapse has been altered or sabotaged somehow, so the thief could remove it with ease. But why and how? It meant the Cupid had, at some point, gained access to the jewelry before giving back to Beryl. For what purpose? To clear the name and create an alibi for the evening? While I was turning all this over in my mind, we arrived outside the auction house. Magnificent jewels glittered in the window. I don't know if I ever told you, if I ever mentioned it, but I have a passion for jewelry. I love craftsmanship and finery, of course. I neither have the means nor many opportunities to wear such pieces, but I'm always captivated by the beauty of gemstones, and naturally, with my work and my way of life, I wouldn't trust myself to carry too many of them around day to day. As I stood there, admiring the display with Haydn, a man in his 50s came out to greet us. He was the owner of the auction house. The newspapers had been quick to report the spectacular thief from the night before, and he has been expecting us. He invited us inside, told us about the sale, introduced the entire staff and the jewelers who had worked on the collection. I questioned them one by one, but nothing particularly interesting came out. The necklace snap clasp was indeed fragile. He had known that at the time of the sale, but since the former singer had said she had it replaced recently, he hadn't considered it necessary to change it again. It would have cost them a great deal for very little. Still, I went to see the jeweler who had done the replacements, and he confirmed that the old diva had asked him to slightly modify the clasp so it would be easier for her to fasten. She claims that, with her old trembling hands, she struggled to manage it alone, and with the necklace being heavy, it sounded plausible. And of course, she had requested the same adjustments for her brooch and all her other jewelry. More than 50 pieces in total. A whim I found surprising for an aging celebrity, especially knowing she was already ruined at the time she placed the order. But, given her reputation of compulsive behavior, it didn't shock me. Naturally, I wasn't the only one involved. The police had also been tasked with recovering the jewels. The day passed in a blur. We wandered through the town in search of clues and proof. We had dinner with the Hamiltons, then went back to the hotel to sleep. Professor Johnson joined us that evening at the restaurant's hotel for Annabelle tea. He couldn't hide his smile. He was sorry for the Hamiltons, of course, but he couldn't conceal his delight at finally having the funds he needed to leave. If everything went as planned, we would be ready to depart by the end of the following week. His joy was infectious, and Hayden and I went to bed smiling. The next morning, someone pounded on my door like a madman. I got up in a rush, ready to shout at whoever had dared to wake me so violently. It was Hayden, hair in disarray. He flung the morning paper on my hands. The jewels has been found. A parcel had been delivered to the newspaper during the night with a small note that read, "This necklace is impossible to sell. Too famous, too precious. I can't find a buyer, so I'm returning it. Sorry for the trouble. Signed X." Incredible! The person hadn't even waited 24 hours to return the necklace. The necklace, but not the brooch, which was worth almost nothing by comparison. Surprising to say the least. But I was finally beginning to understand the reason behind the theft. Hayden and I dressed quickly and went straight to the Hamiltons. Beryl was relieved, but not overjoyed. She cared about that brooch far more than I thought, much more. As soon as we arrived, she threw herself into my arms and begged me to find the jewel she treasured so deeply, the one to which she was so emotionally attached. I suggested we visit the previous owners of the piece, the famous singer. She greeted us by slamming the door before opening it again, reluctantly. In her 60s, she didn't seem as old or frail as I had imagined. She received us in her only room with tea, which she poured herself. Beryl became a child again in front of her. At last, I understood her attachment to the brooch. She was a devoted admirer. I must have listened to the singer's voice on the gramophone, on the record scattered around her living room. The diva asked what we wanted to know, in a voice as sharp in tone as it was melodious in timbre. To every question, she gave the briefest of answers, never more than a few syllables. We were clearly unwelcome, and she took no pleasure in speaking of her lost, bygone past. The more the singer, Mary Wheeler, as she was called, "It will be easier for you to follow this way," spoke, the more Beryl's face fell. The idolized image she had cherished was very different from the woman standing before her. We stayed barely 20 minutes, but I didn't need more. Beryl left looking utterly deflated, yet she kept her smile. Mrs. Wheeler had changed, yes, but she would remain an icon forever, a voice Beryl would always love. I admire the determination in her words. She was far more mature than I thought. The woman she adored had changed, but she would continue to love her. She didn't run from disappointment, she accepted it. Nothing lasts forever, after all. There was only one last thing I need to ask of Beryl to obtain the irrefutable proof I required. she had to offer an enormous reward to anyone who returned the jewel, an absolutely vast sum, 100 times higher than the brooch sale price, with a deadline 3 days away. Beryl stared at me wide eyes, then burst out laughing. She agreed at once and went straight to her uncle, the journalist, so he could publish the notice. 3 days later, exactly as I expected, no one has responded to Beryl's outrageous offer. Not even a letter. Nothing. And that very silence was a confession. A thief motivated by money would have attempted contact, even anonymously. But this one had no interest in negotiating anything. A victorious smile formed on my lips as I read the morning paper over my tea. And I had everything I needed. There wasn't a shadow of doubt left. But, unlike my usual habits, I would not present my deduction before an assembly, only in a small circle. So, for the final act, I asked Hayden to send 2 telegrams to 2 different people involved, urging them to come to me. The first would arrive at 10 o'clock, the second at 10:15. And above all, no one was to be late. At exactly 10, the first person arrived in my room, asked them to remain absolutely silent for the next few minutes, and hide them behind the folding screen. A little surprised, but somewhat secretly, they said nothing and complied. No sooner had they been concealed that someone else announced themselves at the door, asked Hayden to let them in. Mrs. Mary Wheeler stood before us. I invited her to sit before I began to speak. Please sit down. I took the liberty of preparing you some honey tea, just the way you like it. It will soothe your throat while I lay out my conclusions. As you know, I can't bear to be interrupted, so allow me to see whenever I'm right from start to finish, and you may contradict me afterwards. Let us begin, if you please. Madame the diva, or rather, I should say, Madame the thief, for it is you, and you alone, who orchestrated the entire theft. To understand how and why, we must go back to the very origin of the jewel you stole, and I'm now speaking of the necklace, which, despite its monetary value, is only a secondary accessory in this affair. In truth, you wanted to recover only the brooch, didn't you? You attached a sentimental value to it, and you needed to keep it out of Beryl's reach. To take the brooch alone that night might have been dismissed as a loss or an accident. By taking the necklace as well, you created a scandal, an investigation noise, a perfect diversion. That is why you prepared this theft from the moment your collection went up for sale. You had every clasp altered. You changed them all under the pretext of shaking hands, so no one would suspect you. The clasps were functional, yes, but far easier than average weapon. One pressure in exactly the right place was enough. Your hands, however, are not frail, quite the opposite. I saw it when I came to your home. You attempt to imitate trembling hands, but without success, I'm afraid. You would not make a convincing actress on stage, but never mind. Everything was ready. All you needed was an opportunity to approach Beryl in the crowd and, in the dark, strike accurately. And you knew precisely what to look for: an emerald brooch, an emerald-eye motif, something no one else would have dared to wear that night. But before we return to the evening of the theft, we must go back further back. 18 years ago. You knew the Hamilton residence so well because you visited many times in the past. You discovered the secret passage long ago and made clever use of it, I must say. You were Mr. Hamilton's lover, weren't you? You came to see him in secret, while his wife was away visiting family or friends. Beryl is your daughter. The resemblance between the two of you is so striking it is impossible to miss. Beryl bear no resemblance at all to her late mother. Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton, unable to have children, decided to adopt her. And you agreed. It spared you the scandal and allowed you to continue your career without any problem. And you knew she would be loved and cherished, which is perfectly true. Understand that I do not blame your choice. I am merely stating the facts. You cut all ties with the Hamilton family. That was part of the arrangement. The only thing you lovers allow you to keep was this little brooch you had commissioned, because that eyes is not yours, it is your daughter's. You both have the same beauty mark, it is uncanny, but the eyes is Beryl's, not yours. If Beryl has been so drawn to you, it is not only for your voice, but also for the physical resemblance that must have troubled her. Now let us return to the night of the theft. You trip the house breakers, cutting the power and plunging everything into darkness. You plugging a lamp whose wire has been deliberately damaged to cause a short circuit to blow the fuse. In the crowd, you were invisible. No one recognized you. Even I failed to notice your presence. But then, more than 100 people were packed into the townhouse. Bravo for your discretion. Once the light went out, you did exactly what you came to do. It took you less than a minute to leave your hiding place, steal the necklace, and slip away through the passage secrets behind the tapestry, your prize under your arm. And if you returned the necklace the very next day, it was because you never needed it. Your sole objective was the brooch being the only link you still had to your child. That is why I asked Beryl to offer an ulterior outrageous rewards. It was the only irrefutable way to prove that the thief had nothing to do with the jewel monetary value, but everything to do with sentiments. I know you do not wish to see Beryl, but I promise her the truth. You understand, then, why I have to stage this little thing. What you choose to do outside these walls is no longer my concern. I have only carried out the task I was given, and I hope I had not offended you too deeply in doing so. Mrs. Wheeler nodded a few times. She remained silent for a moment, then drew the brooch off her back to show me, and placed it back exactly where it belongs. She waited a few seconds longer, then stood and left without a word. A moment later, Beryl emerged from behind the screen. A smile formed on her lips as a tear ran down her right eye, that beautiful green eyes, forever fixed in enamel. And so, my dear, that is how I solved this little mystery just before leaving for the North Pole. I do not know whenever they will see each other again, but that is no longer my problem. Tomorrow we will leave for Canada, our second stop after the United States, before the deep cold on the ice. Hoping to hear from you soon, my dear Annabelle Underwood. And that's all for today. Thank you again for listening all the way through. And please don't hesitate to subscribe and give us a like and talk about it to your friend or family if you want. See you soon for more adventures with Annabelle Underwood.